Are you tired of all the baloney? Well, you know what you need. Straight talk with Jack Graham. So make sure you hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss out on any future videos. Now, here is Jack Graham.
Well, welcome back, everybody. It's Jack Graham, and we're here to do another video today. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for taking some time out of your day to be here to listen about one of my favorite trumpet players. First of all, if you do like what you see here, please subscribe to the channel and hit the like button and that kind of stuff. We're going to talk about Art Farmer today. Art Farmer is one of my favorite trumpet players. He may not be the household name that Miles Davis or Clifford Brown or Lee Morgan or Freddie Hubbard or on and on and on was during the period of the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, and even into the early 90s. But Art was an amazing player. In an era that was known for the, I don't want to say brassy or brilliant, loud, brilliant, hard bop style of trumpet playing. Along came Art Farmer. Art Farmer came out of Iowa, where he was born, moved to Phoenix, and then moved to Los Angeles when he was a youngster, and developed a style of playing that was very kind of different than what was really going on during the period. Art had a very warm sound, very, I don't want to say restrained, but it was less bombastic than the Cliffords and the Dizzies and the Mileses and Lee Morgans and those folks. He had a very, very, very distinctive sound, and the way he phrased was amazing. He always played a little bit ahead of the beat, which to me was interesting. In that you could tell he was thinking ahead and had in his mind what he wanted to do very distinctly, almost like if you watch John Coltrane play and watch Charlie Parker play, watch some of these guys play, they're thinking, their brains were going crazy while they were playing, and Art did just the same. He was just a maven on getting around chord changes, kind of like John Coltrane was and the other folks. But he was a little bit laid back, and maybe that came from his background in California. I don't know, but he just had a very distinctive style, a very melodious style of playing that. That was quite interesting. Back in the 60s, if you go back to Miles's quintets, things were progressing. Things were becoming more modern. Not to say Art's playing wasn't modern, but it was very melodious and very, very flowing. I once heard someone say that Lester Young told him that every note has to have a meaning, and I think Art really portrayed that, like nobody else, like Lester Young and some other folks, but Art was just amazing. Art was a great ballad player. To me, no one I shouldn't say that, but few people could consistently play ballads exceedingly well than Art Farmer. I'd put Freddie Hubbard in that. I'd put Clifford Brown in there. Different styles. Art's just was such a tasty player. One of my favorite players. I can't remember who it was. It might have been Art Blakey called him Arturo Tosca Farmer as a takeoff on Arturo Toscanini. That's how Art was. He was a master. He began on the trumpet, of course, and made a bunch of records. We're going to show you some. And then the move to the flugelhorn, which is a bigger brass instrument or silver plated. The tubing and the bell is bigger and had a warmer sound, and you could see other players move to that. Freddie played a lot of flugelhorn and many other players, but Art, I think, was the first really to almost play flugelhorn exclusively for a long, long period of time. He once auditioned for Disney's band and didn't make it. He went back to L.A. He was involved in a pretty serious car accident. Seems a lot of trumpet players get in car accidents. I think he got a pretty serious concussion and didn't play for quite a while. He didn't always work back in L.A. at the time. The studios were made up of mostly white trumpet players, and guys like Art Farmer just weren't getting a lot of work. So he actually worked in a hospital as a file clerk, and I think as a janitor for a while. Hard to believe, such a great player. But I guess you've got to eat. He joined Lionel Hampton's band in the 50s, and I think that became a major focus point for him because he got to work in a trumpet section with Quincy Jones and Clifford Brown, and I believe Benny Bailey might have been in that band that toured Europe in early 1950, right about the time I was born. And in 1953 he met Gigi Grace in Europe, and that formed something that I think he remembered for when he later moved to Vienna. He actually made 2 records with Horace Silver, one called Further Explorations, and I can't remember the other one. Might have been called Stylings of Silver. I don't remember, for Blue Note back in the 60s. So, he's worked with a lot of different people. Art Farmer claimed that a trumpet player named Freddie Webster, who was from California, was a major influence on him, on his playing, as was, the players of the day, Dizzy Gillespie and Fats Navarro, Miles Davis. But Art developed a style that really was very individual. When Art played 2-3 notes, you knew who it was. Highest compliment you could pay somebody. Pay somebody is hearing a few notes and knowing who it is. Few people can do that, but many of the geniuses that we all listen to have attained that ability. Though these folks played together in the 50s, in 1960, I believe, Art and Benny Golson formed a group called the Jazztet. And that group worked as a working group for about 3 or 4 years, and then had different players, but it was mainly a very young McCoy Tyner, very young Curtis Fuller, of course Art's brother Addison Farmer on bass, and Dave Bailey on drums. We're going to look at a couple records they did, just great stuff that I would highly recommend. I believe in 1960 that band won the poll for new talent in downbeat, which is pretty influential. Tunes like Killer Joe, Blues March, I Remember Clifford, Farmer's Market, standards in the jazz repertoire came out of that group, the Jazztet. Great group. Folks like Duke Pearson and Harold Mayburn, John Lewis, all played in that band. Very young players at the time. Art went and did some other things, worked with some other groups, did a lot of playing with Jimmy Heath, tenor player. We're going to talk about that and show you a couple of records. In 68, Art moved over to Europe, to Vienna, and lived there, worked for the Vienna Radio Orchestra, and then began working with many of the expatriate jazz players that were in Europe. Made quite a name for himself. Came back to New York periodically to record and play. Split time back and forth in Vienna. Um, in the mid 80s, I guess, Art started working with Clifford Jordan, great player. Did a lot of work in Sweet Basil's in New York. I remember seeing that band many times in Sweet Basil's. I was an Art Farmer nut. Whenever I could see Art play, I would go see Art play. Just loved his playing. And again, he played differently. When you hear him play, he played differently than the norm, what was going on during that period. Warm sound, great ballad player, what have you. Get to know Art Farmer. There's plenty of stuff you can hear Art play, I believe, on YouTube. And I'm going to show you some records that I would, there's a lot of records here. I don't expect you to go out and buy all of them, but I'll try to get to most of them. You can't hardly miss with these Prestige reissues. They're all on brown covers and have a picture of the artist in the middle. I guess there's a name for the series, a specially priced 2-record set on Prestige. I've got a number of these. And on here is the Art Farmer reissue. It's mostly just stuff from the 50s and the mid to early and late 50s, not late 50s, up to 56, I believe. Work of Art, a record is on here. Art Farmer Quintet, going back to 1951, is on here. Farmer's Market is on here. It's a great way to get 2-3 records, and they're all done well by Prestige Records. If you see these around and they're in good shape, pick them up no matter who's on them. They're normally pretty good. Here's another record on Prestige with Gigi Grice and Quincy Jones doing the arrangements. And this was done in 1951 on Prestige Records. This is the OJC version that came out in 1963. You can see the label here. And you've got Jimmy Cleveland, Charlie Rouse, Danny Bank on baritone. Horace Silver's on this. He worked a little bit with Horace. Horace really liked Art Farmer's playing. Really good record. OJC, I believe it might have been reissued after this a couple times. But the young Art Farmer in New York playing really well. He also worked as a sideman for a lot of folks that we're going to talk about more than just this one. But this record is a record that came out about 2 or 3 years ago that was recorded in 1957 with Sonny Clark on piano. Sonny Clark's a great player. On Blue Note, under their classic vinyl series, you can pick all these Blue Note classic vinyls up for about $29.95, I believe. Great value, and they're all done well. But Art Farmer's on this with Curtis Fuller, Mobley, and Louis Henry's on drums. But you can hear Art with Sonny Clark on here. He is still playing trumpet on this, as it was recorded in 1957 from Blue Note. Moving on, in 1958, released on the Contemporary series by Kraft recently, is A Portrait of Art Farmer. It was recorded in 1958. Really, really good record. Was recorded at Contemporary Studios in California. And you've got, of course, Hank Jones. What a great player. Roy Haynes on drums. Addison Farmer on bass. He did a lot of work with Addison Farmer. He was a great player. I don't know what happened to Addison. I don't know if he just quit playing or passed away or whatever. But he's a great player. This is available through Kraft Records. And it's a very, very great sounding record. I don't know who did the... Bernie Grunman, of course, did the mastering. Great sounding record. Portrait of Art Farmer. If you don't have that, that's a great introduction to Art Farmer. I'm sure you could stream that too. Going back, here's a record on Cadet Records called the Jazztet at Birdland. This, I believe, was the second Jazztet record, and it features the people who were on the original Argo of the Jazztet meet and with Benny Golson. This was later released on Cadet, which is this. I do have an Argo up top here. Both are in pretty good shape. This is a classic record. This is one I think everybody's library should have. Recorded in 1960. What's on here that is amazing is I Remember Clifford and Blues March. You've probably heard their jazz classics. Killer Joe is on here. Quincy Jones later did an arrangement in the album Walking in Space in the 1970s with Freddie playing a solo on that, Freddie Hubbard. But this is a great record. I know you can stream this, stream it, buy it. If you don't have it, get it. I think it's one of the top 2 or 3 Art Farmer records of all time. Make sure you get this one. Ahead, we've got Art Farmer with Jim Hall. It's another record he did with Jim Hall. He's actually done 2. I'm going to show you the other one. This is done in 1963. This is on the Atlantic label, and it's live at the Blue Note, done in 1963. Really good recording. I think some of Art's best playing is on here. The great Art Farmer. This is a record that was reissued. It's called The Many Faces of Art Farmer. It's reissued. It's a hard record to find. I had to buy it on a crazy label called Uptown Records. Sonically, this is crappy. It really is. Musically, it's amazing. But The Many Faces of Art Farmer, if you can find that, done in 1964. It's a good one. An interesting record that Art did in 1966 on the Atlantic label. Didn't record too much for Atlantic. It's funny, this can be played on a stereo phonograph. Pretty interesting. But this is the original Atlantic mono, the purple and orange label. And who's on here is Steve Coons is on here. Great pianist. Steve Swallow is on here. Early, young Steve Swallow. And Pete LaRocca on drums. Very underrated drummer. Did 1 or 2 records for Blue Note. Was a sideman with many groups. But this is called Sing Me Softly of the Blues. Great Art Farmer playing on Atlantic. Again, there's many more. I'm just showing you records that I really love. Here's a record called Art Farmer and Benny Golson. This is a later reuniting of Art Farmer and Benny Golson on Contemporary Records. But this is recorded in 1985. And it was done in New York with Curtis Fuller and Mickey Tucker on drums, Ray Drummond on bass, Mickey Tucker on piano, I'm sorry. And he plays really well in this. It's a great version of the classic Speak Low on here. It's just beautiful. Back to the City. Art Farmer coming back to New York when he was living in Vienna. There's another record made on a trip back to New York on the Inner City label. Great sounding records from Inner City called Art Farmer and Boomers. I never saw the group at Boomers. In fact, I'd never been to Boomers. I heard it was a nice little club that closed. But the good thing about this record is there's only 4 cuts on here, 2 per side, so they stretch out, a lot. The Benny Golson, I Remember Clifford's on here, and Around Midnight's on here. Really good record. And of course, Clifford Jordan, Cedar Walton, Smilin' Billy Higgins on drums. What a group. Sam Jones on bass, all-star group. If you could find this, pick it up. It's amazing. Here's another contemporary issued. This is done back in the mid-70s. Yeah, back in the mid-70s, and reissued on a contemporary label. And Art Farmer on the road. This is a West Coast group. You've got Hampton Hawes on piano, Ray Brown on bass, Shelly Man on drums. And it was recorded in 1960. Okay, so, a later record that Art did back for Contemporary is a record called The Art Farmer Quintet. This was one of his last records done in New York. And it was done with James Williams on piano, good player. Rufus Street on bass, Victor Lewis on drums, good rhythm section. Art plays really well on here. These Contemporaries sound really good, and you can pick them up pretty cheap. This is a price tag on there of $3, and it's a reissue, but it sounds really, really, really good. And if you can find these on any Art Farmer Contemporary, you can't go wrong. Art did a couple records with some other players, one of which is Jimmy Heath. If I had to take only, if I could take 30 records instead of 20 like I did in my last videos, this would be in that pile. Time and a place. It says live concert performance. Sorry folks, this was not live. This is done in a studio for Columbia where they inserted a crowd that sounds like it was done at Carnegie Hall. Applauding between cuts at the beginning of each track. And I could do without that, but Columbia, I guess, felt they had to do it. But this is a great record. Some of Art Farmer's greatest playing is, I think, on this record. Columbia 2i, original. Sounds real good. You can stream this. It's great. He did some playing with Jim Hall, the guitarist. Did 2 records, one of which is on the Horizon label. I'm not a big fan of the Horizon label sound. It's okay, it's not great, but the playing is good. Jim Hall and Art Farmer, called Commitment on Horizon, which is part of A&M Records. I don't think their sound was tremendous. But one that has great sound is on CTI. CTI made some decent records that were a little less commercial than others, but Jim Hall and Art Farmer did a record with four tunes where they really stretch out on CTI record called Big Blues. This is a great record. This is a great, great record. Art Farmer, Jim Hall. And finally, of course, my favorite alto player, Phil Woods, did a record with Art Farmer on Jazz International. This is done early because Paul Modian's on here, Teddy Kotick's on here, Ernie Costa. I don't know when this was recorded. I'm guessing back in the 70s at some point. On the Jazz International record. Might be an import, but if you can find it, it's real good. Art Farmer and Phil Woods. 2 of my favorite people on one record. How about that? I've got some CDs. I'm not going to go through all of these in the essence of time. Modern Art on CD and Out of the Past on CD. Really, really great record. If you want to hear Art play commercial, I would recommend finding, and this is a original master copy by Mobile Fidelity, done called Here's That Rainy Day. This is originally a record called Gentle Eyes on MSP Records, I believe, or MPS rather. I have the record. The CD sounds great. It's with a string orchestra. I believe Klaus Orgerman or one of those guys, Hans Stillman, one of those European guys did the arranging. Just really nice stuff. Billy Higgins is on here, Jimmy Heath is on here, Sam Jones. But there's an orchestra on here, and Art plays so good. It's either Gentle Eyes, the MoFi CD is Here's That Rainy Day. 2 of the tunes that are on here. Great, great tunes to have dinner by. Art's playing is superb on here. In later years, Art did 2 records in Japan in the 90s for PCM. I have them both. They're okay. You can get them on CD. They'll have Japanese writing on the back. Sound great musically. I don't think they're as good as the Gentle Eyes, but they're in that mode. Little commercial. Art Farmer, folks, please get to know Art Farmer. I think you'll really say, boy, where have I been? What a great player. What a tasty player. Anyhow, thank you all for being here. I appreciate your time. Please like, subscribe, and we'll see you next time. And until next time, thank you, and bye-bye.